Hi viewers, I am DS, a psychologist, and welcome back to our second part of our discussion of existential depression. So if you have not watched our part 1 of the series, here is the link. Do watch it first so that you can understand what existential depression is. So in this episode, we are going to talk more about existential depression and how you can actually get out of existential depression if you have an episode of existential depression. Okay, so let's get to it.
Let's get this party started!
Yeah!
So now I'm going to explain what existential depression is really like. Existential depression basically stems from frustration. So people who suffer from existential depression realize that every effort that they make is futile. So no matter how they contribute to the human population, everything sums up to zero. They just die. So what happens after that? There is nothing. So it is depressing to think about that. So especially when they are trying their best to meet their personal standards, but people around them are not appreciating their effort. So it really can cause them to feel very frustrated. On top of that, the world and society is full of structures, and these structures can really limit the individual with existential depression. So presume you have an idea that can change the world or the organization of sorts, but you have to put up with so much paperwork. So it can be really very frustrating. So the person with existential depression might ask, why is it so hard? Why are we going through so much suffering as individuals and at the end of it achieve nothing and die? So viewers, I'm not too sure whether you are watching this because you have existential depression or because you are interested in understanding a person with existential depression. Because from an outsider's point of view, this is a very trivial question. Many people don't think about existence much. Even if they think about existence, it's just fleeting. But a person with existential depression really thinks a lot and deeply into existence and purpose. So the frustration turns into anger, and this anger sometimes manifests itself in a form of a rebellion, like I don't want to do this anymore.
I don't wanna do this anymore.
They feel helpless about things. They feel hopeless about things. And soon, this frustration which has turned into anger turns into a form of a depression. So you can look at existential depression in two different layers. One is that of me against the others, me against the society. The person suffering from existential depression usually finds themselves a misfit because we live in a society where the majority dictates the norm. So it is frustrating because we know what is good for the world, but we cannot rise to the occasion. So we are limited, and this is frustrating. So another aspect of existential depression is the realization that we all as human beings have to face the inevitable doom. So different individuals may have different questions. So one individual may ask these questions like, why are we born with so many talents but we cannot use them all? Why do we have to die and not be able to contribute? What does the world want of me? What does God want of me? What am I supposed to do? Why am I having so many struggles when God wants me to do this? So this frustration can really become very intense. And so a person suffering from existential depression can go on a sad and depressive mode for a very long time because the frustration, the anger doesn't go away. So our next question is, how do you know someone is suffering from existential depression? Usually, you wouldn't know unless they tell you so. So INTJs, they are usually very well educated. They know and may have research on existential depression, so they know what it is. They could tell you straight, I am suffering from existential depression now. I don't want to talk to anyone. And that brings me. Social withdrawal is a clear sign of people with existential depression. Though generally, people with depression have social withdrawal. So people with existential depression don't want to talk. There is a very simple reason for this, because nobody understands. I don't want to talk about this and have people tell me, oh, you're thinking too much. Oh, just let it be. It serves nothing. So it makes me even more depressed. So I really hate it when people tell me, don't think so much. So what is wrong with thinking so much? Conversely, I think that people who do not think about existence are just living their day-to-day existence like animals. This is like a dog. A dog goes out, plays all day, comes back, eat. You know, the human being is repeating all that. What is the difference between the human being and a common animal? So here, as you can see, another reason why a person with existential depression does not want to share his depression with anybody else is because nobody else usually shares concerns about existing. Nobody likes to talk about life in general. They are just concerned about material things like how to make more money, how to get a lover, who is the next person for me.
Today's reading is a really exciting one. It is your next relationship.
It's not to say that a person with existential depression is not concerned about our general daily things like love, money, work, but we are also deeply concerned with meaning of life, purpose of life. Sometimes understanding that no matter how much we do, it all turns out to nothing, that all our effort is futile, is really very depressing. So besides social withdrawal, is there any other indicator that a person may be suffering from existential depression? Yes, and that is snobbery. So what do I mean by that? Sometimes the anger that one feels in existential depression can be so intense and so great that you want to dissociate yourself with other people completely. You wonder, why are people not concerned about meaning of life at all? Why are they only interested in the TV games, in tabloid, in show business, in all these meaningless things? Why are they minding machines like monkeys? Why are they behaving and living like dogs? So when you start angry with the general population, thinking that they are really very superficial, shallow beings who are only interested in normal things that you are not, you start to feel that they are lower beings. So this is where snobbery comes in, because you want to regard yourself as a higher individual while everybody else is a commoner. So for a person suffering from existential depression, they may use demeaning words to debase the people around them, calling them commoners, low-class people, or whatever that it is. They actually do not really mean it. They just want to make a conscious effort to separate themselves from the crowd. Because it is so frustrating to think of other people around them as people who are not really thinking about spirituality, thinking about the purpose of life. So while it is not nice to be a snob, you must really understand that a person suffering from existential depression does not enjoy his life at all. So they might have this form of a thinking: I am just an individual that will make no eventual impact on the world, and then I die. But of course, for many people who do not really think much about existence, they have no feeling about this kind of sentences. So here comes the next question: how do we get out of existential depression? So if you have an INTJ friend that is very dear to you and you know that this person is suffering from existential depression, maybe you can recommend this video to them. Otherwise, you can also show them this word, love. So in general, I have found that in order for me to jump out of my existential depression, I just need to focus on love. So love is a very generic word. It does not only refer to romantic relationships. So love for your work in general can help. So imagine you are a clown and then you know that you are supposed to entertain the crowd, but then you hate the crowd because you think that the crowd are silly people. So this means that you are really going to hate your work because you are forcing yourself to entertain people that you do not like. So if you love your job instead, then you realize that, hey, you are bringing on smiles to people. Maybe they are really superficial, but at that one point in time, you give them inspiration, you give them hope. Realize that you actually can make contributions in your own way, even though they are very small contributions. So if you really cannot love your job, try to love something else. Love yourself, love the world, love nature, love someone. So I think INTJs may really have a struggle getting out of existential depression because they are also slow to love. So although a lot of times when I'm suffering from existential depression, I want to be alone. However, I force myself to go out to experience nature, to look at sceneries, and maybe to be with someone. The someone need not talk at all. It can really help me in a way. I just need to fine tune. So in my personal experience, indulging in vices does not help at all. It just makes you feel very, very empty. So you can indulge in video games, indulge in sex, indulge in shopping, anything. They do not really make you overall happy, and it makes you feel much worse than that. So another thing that you can do to help yourself get out of existential depression is, strangely, do good deeds with no agenda. So this is a really very simple thing to do. The good deeds could be with people, with animals, with nature, anything that you can think of. Make yourself happy, and while you are doing it, do it with a lot of gratitude and happiness and joy. But slowly but surely you realize that hey, life can be very meaningful even though you are contributing this little. All these little things that you are doing can actually accumulate to become a very big impact in the society or in the world. Another thing that I think that is very important in helping us get out of existential depression is to have a faith. So when I talk about faith, I do not mean a religion, because most people with existential depression do think about world, do think about life in general, and definitely they may have considered different religions. And usually people with existential depression will dismiss religion. So one of the reasons why this is the case is people with existential depression understand that religion is but just a social construct. So this might sound offensive to many people who are very religious, but so ultimately, eventually, most people with existential depression will start to formulate a worldview. So in part 1 of our series, we started off with a few questions that maybe people with existential depression ask, such as why do people die? Why do some people have to die early? That kind of questions. With a worldview, we will be able to understand and explain why things work that way. So this gave us some form of an explanation and solace. Even though it is inevitable that we will also one day die and maybe be cremated or that kind of thing, nonetheless, we know that our existence is not just something that has no impact. I prefer to think that after I die, there is something else waiting for me in my second part of the journey. I still insist that this life on its own is really meaningless. So strangely, one solution for me to combat my existential depression is to think about my next life. So in my next life, I do not want to come back as a human being again. I think it's full of struggle and it is somewhat futile and pointless to go through the same battle or same again. So I have already identified what I want to do in my next life. But given that, I am not going to be very passive about my current life. I am not going to commit suicide because of the depression. Usually people with existential depression, they are not suicidal. They are just upset and they will bounce out of it. So one may not need to worry about people with existential depression, especially when they are adults, to be suicidal. But if we have teenagers or children who may be suffering from existential depression, that may have been a different story. So I want to enjoy my life. I want to do as much as I can and make as much contribution as I can and learn as much. I am free to make as many mistakes as I can as well, because I'm a human being, I'm not God. So with all this understanding, I think that even though next time I have another episode of existential depression, it's going to be very easy for me to bounce back onto course. So fellow people with existential depression, what are some of the ways that you use to help yourself to get out of this depression? Do share with me in the comment section. Nevertheless, I also hope that what I have actually proposed in this video has helped you as well. Okay, we have one last question. Do I feel that existential depression is a form of mental disorder? The answer is no. I feel conversely that people who do not think about their lives are pathological. So I think ordinary people may have become very mindless about their life. So they wake up, they go to work, and come back, and in the middle they play a lot of games, they watch a lot of rubbish videos. Not this one though. And then so their life repeats and repeats and repeats until they die. So the ordinary life is generally circling around deficits. So most people will think about, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough love, I don't have enough of this and that. And then they continue to chase after all these things that they feel that they are lacking. So they are not growing because they are always lacking. So personally, I think that that kind of life is pathological. It's not a good life at all. But of course, they have innocence and they have ignorance. So they are generally protected from existential depression, which can be very damaging. So viewers, I hope I have not missed out on any of the questions with regards to existential depression. But if you do have additional questions on this topic, do comment below so I can answer them directly. And of course, I hope that this video is going to help fellow INTJs in existential depression. Alright, this is my first attempt at making a two-part series on one single topic, and I hope that you really like it and find this topic very meaningful. If you have not subscribed, do consider subscribing so that we can bring you more interesting videos like this one. Okay, I am going to sign off now, and I'll see you in my next episode. Goodbye!